It started as a curiosity. I had heard whispers, dark rumors about something called the dark web. It was the stuff of horror stories. People spoke of it in hushed tones, warning others to stay away. But for me, the idea of something so secret, so hidden from the eyes of the ordinary world was too enticing. I wasn't a criminal, far from it. I was just an average guy in his late 20s, living in a small apartment in Denver. I worked a 9-to-5 job at a tech company, and to be honest, my life was pretty boring. But this dark web, it called to me. The idea that there were hidden corners of the internet that no one could trace, no one could monitor, was exhilarating. There were rumors of illegal marketplaces, disturbing forums, and even videos that were too graphic for the average human mind to process. One night, in a moment of weakness, I decided to dive in. It was simple: download Tor, the browser that gave you access to the hidden web. No one would ever know. A few clicks and I was in. My heart raced as I typed the URL into the search bar, a shiver running down my spine. The screen lit up with a series of strange symbols and cryptic links. I knew that once I crossed this line, there was no going back. But at that moment, I didn't care. I was about to discover something that no one else had seen. The first thing I clicked was an innocuous-looking link with the title, Forbidden Videos. My stomach churned as the page loaded. It was a simple text box with instructions to download a file. I hesitated, but my curiosity won. I clicked download. The file was labeled only with a string of random numbers and letters, but I didn't think twice. It was small, no more than a few megabytes. It had to be a joke, right? But when I opened it, the first thing I saw made my blood run cold. A man, tied to a chair, eyes wide with terror, his mouth gagged. The video was grainy, shot in a dimly lit room. But what made my skin crawl wasn't just the image. It was the voice. A distorted voice, cold and robotic, speaking directly to the man in the chair. Told him things I won't repeat. I don't even know why I kept watching, but I couldn't stop. My body was frozen in place, my hand trembling over the mouse. And then, just when I thought I couldn't handle it anymore, the video cut to black. For a second, everything was silent. And then I heard it, faint at first but unmistakable. The sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and coming closer. I froze. My eyes darted to the corners of the screen, expecting to see someone standing behind me. But no one was there. And then it hit me. I wasn't alone anymore. The moment I clicked on that file, I had been traced. Somehow, someone had found me. I didn't know how, I didn't know who, but the feeling in my gut told me that I had just crossed into a world I wasn't prepared for. The next click would be the one that changed everything. The screen flickered, and then it went black. For a few seconds, I sat there, motionless, waiting for the inevitable. I thought I heard something, just a faint noise, like someone breathing on the other end of the line, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. I waited, expecting to see my screen flash with some kind of warning, or worse, a message from whoever had been watching me. I was wrong. Instead, the silence felt oppressive. My pulse pounded in my ears. I tried to move my mouse, but it wouldn't respond. The cursor was frozen. Then my screen flashed back to life. The page that appeared was unlike anything I had seen on the dark web so far. It wasn't a marketplace or a forum. It was an image, a photograph, but not just any photograph. It was a picture of me. I could see myself clearly, sitting in front of my computer, just as I was now. The photo had been taken from outside my apartment window, at the exact angle where my reflection would be visible. The image was grainy, but the details were unmistakable: the clothes I was wearing, the dim light from my desk lamp, and even the slight shadow cast by my computer monitor. I didn't know how they had done it. I couldn't fathom how someone could have gotten that close without me noticing. My heart started to race. I quickly looked around my room, but the windows were shut, the blinds drawn. No one should have been able to take that photo. Then another message appeared on the screen. This one, written in cold, precise letters. "We're watching you." I tried to turn off the computer, but it wouldn't shut down. The screen remained illuminated, the words blinking slowly, taunting me. I pulled the plug from the wall, but nothing changed. The monitor remained on, the image of me staring back at myself, like some sick reflection in a funhouse mirror. That's when the messages started coming in. At first, it was just a few random strings of text, jumbled letters and numbers that didn't make sense. But then they began to form into coherent sentences, each one more unsettling than the last. Did you think you could escape? You're already a part of it. It's too late to leave. Panic set in. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but it was just as useless. The screen was flooded with the same cryptic messages. My social media accounts had been taken over. My private messages, my emails, everything was being watched, tracked. It was as if my entire life had been laid bare before them. I ran to the door and flung it open, expecting to see someone waiting for me, someone with a mask or a shadow lurking in the hallway. But there was nothing. My apartment was eerily quiet. I tried to call the police, but the phone line was dead. The lights in my apartment flickered and a sudden chill filled the air. That's when I realized I wasn't just being watched. They were in my home. They were in my life. And it wasn't just the computer that was compromised. Every single device I had was a potential door for them to enter. The phone, the TV, even the smart lights in my apartment. It was all connected. I was trapped. My breaths came in shallow gasps as I staggered around my apartment, trying to find something, anything that would give me a sense of control. My mind raced, but there was only one thought consuming me. How did they get to me? How could they see me through every device, every camera, every screen? I felt exposed in ways I never could have imagined. I ran to my laptop, desperately trying to disconnect from the network, but it was too late. The screen flickered again, and a new message appeared, even more chilling than the last. We know what you're thinking. A cold sweat broke out across my back. I sat frozen in front of the screen, every muscle tensed, waiting for something more, something worse. Then it happened. The doorbell rang. It was just a brief sound, almost drowned out by the pounding of my heart. My first thought was that it was a neighbor, or maybe even the police showing up to check on me after the strange calls I made. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. Whoever had been watching me wasn't going to just ring the doorbell. I crept over to the peephole, hesitant to even breathe. I couldn't see anyone outside, but the feeling of being watched never left me. I backed away from the door slowly, but just as I turned to head back to my desk, the doorbell rang again. This time louder, with a sense of urgency. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The sound was almost too precise. It was like they knew I was watching, waiting. My hands shaking, I turned the deadbolt and cracked the door open, just enough to peek through. There was nothing. No one. My heart stopped. I slammed the door shut, bolting it behind me. The apartment felt suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in. I ran to the windows, looking out onto the street below, hoping to see something, anything, that could explain the feeling of terror washing over me. That's when I saw it. The figure standing across the street. I could only make out the silhouette, but it was unmistakable. A tall man, his face obscured by the shadows. He stood completely still, his body stiff and unmoving. And then, without warning, he turned and walked into the alley behind the building. I didn't know who he was, but I knew one thing. He was connected to whatever nightmare I had stumbled into. I rushed to my phone, dialing the number for the police. This time it rang, and rang. There was no answer. Just as I started to lose hope, a notification popped up on my phone. An anonymous message. The sender had no name, just an encrypted number. It's too late to stop now. The message had no punctuation, no emotion. Just those words, hanging there in the digital space between us. I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. Something or someone watching from the shadows. I couldn't make out their features, but I could feel their presence as though they were right behind me. My head snapped toward the window. There, in the reflection, I saw something that made my stomach drop, a figure standing behind me in the dark, just outside the reach of the light. I wasn't alone. The game had just begun, and I was the prey. My hands were trembling as I turned slowly, trying to keep my composure. The figure in the window, the one I thought I saw in the reflection, was no longer there. But the feeling, the overwhelming, suffocating feeling of being watched, never left me. It hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating every breath I took. I backed away from the window, my eyes darting around the room. I couldn't trust the shadows anymore. I couldn't trust anything. I bolted the windows shut, checked every corner of the apartment, and even under the furniture, as if I could somehow find some trace of the intruder, some sign that it was all just a sick prank. But deep down, I knew this was no joke. Whoever or whatever they weren't playing games. I turned back to my laptop, hoping that if I could just shut it down and disconnect, I might be able to escape from this nightmare. But when I opened the lid, the screen flickered again. Another message. You're still here? I felt a cold wave of nausea. It wasn't the message itself, it was the timing. I had been moving around my apartment, checking for intruders, making sure the door was locked, yet they knew exactly where I was and what I was doing. It was like they had eyes everywhere. A new notification appeared on my phone. This time, it was a photo. A grainy shot showing me from behind, taken from inside my own apartment. It was blurry, but unmistakable. The edge of my couch, the top of my head, and a sliver of my shirt. It wasn't a shot from outside, it wasn't a window reflection. It was from inside the apartment. I immediately checked the corners of my living room, expecting to find someone crouched in the darkness. But there was nothing. My breath came in ragged gasps. I felt the walls closing in again, tightening around me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a single word. Run. I couldn't tell if it was real or just a part of the madness consuming me, but I had to act. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to leave, to get away. But where could I go? Who could I turn to? The police wouldn't believe me, not after the strange things that had been happening. My mind was screaming at me to go, to escape, but my body refused to move. I was paralyzed by fear, a fear that was as real as the very air around me. The phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a text. It was a call, a strange, encrypted number. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. I heard nothing at first, just static. And then, a low, distorted voice, almost drowned out by a crackling sound. It's already too late. I slammed the phone down, the ringing still echoing in my ears. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to trust. All I knew was that I was running out of time. I glanced around again, as if expecting the shadows to take shape and reveal themselves. But this time, something was different. The lights in my apartment flickered once more, then went out completely. Total darkness. I stumbled around, my hand outstretched, trying to find a source of light. My phone was my only lifeline, its screen casting an eerie glow as I fumbled to turn on the flashlight. And then I heard it, a soft scratching sound. I froze. It was coming from the hallway. Slowly, carefully, I crept toward the door, my pulse thundering in my ears. I dared not open it fully, but I cracked it just enough to peer into the hallway. The faint light from my phone illuminated the area just outside. There was no one, but the scratching continued. It was as if someone or something was trying to claw its way into my apartment. I held my breath, watching the door handle, praying it wouldn't turn. The noise grew louder, closer. And then, as quickly as it had started, it stopped. In the stillness that followed, I heard something far worse than any scratching. A voice, from inside my apartment. It was barely a whisper, but it was unmistakable. We're inside. And at that moment, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. I wasn't just being watched. I was being hunted. I couldn't breathe. I pressed my back against the door, my body rigid with terror. The voice, soft, chilling, so close it was as if they were standing just inches from me, echoed in my ears. We're inside. The world seemed to collapse around me, the walls closing in. My mind was spinning, frantically searching for a way out, some explanation, some way to escape this nightmare. But there was no way out. Every door was sealed. Every window was locked. The phone in my hand buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I knew what it would be, a message, or worse, another photo. But the fear of not knowing was worse, so I reluctantly glanced at the screen. A new message. Don't bother running. You're already where we want you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room and pretend this was all just some sick game. But it wasn't. This was real. I stumbled back into the living room, scanning every corner. The air was thick with the smell of stale sweat and fear. The lights were still off, but the glow of my phone illuminated everything in an eerie, almost surreal light. I couldn't escape it. The scratching noise began again. This time, it was louder, more deliberate. Thud. I jumped, turning toward the source of the noise. It was coming from the ceiling. A soft thud followed by another. Then a scraping sound as if something was moving overhead. Slowly, methodically. I couldn't understand how it was possible, but it was real. It was happening. I ran to the window, hoping to see something, anything, to help me make sense of it. The street below was empty, the buildings surrounding me dark and lifeless. But there, in the distance, I saw something. A figure. A man. Standing motionless, his silhouette framed by the streetlights in the distance. My heart skipped a beat. The same man I had seen earlier. He was still out there, still watching. He hadn't moved. Then I heard it. the unmistakable sound of the door handle turning. Click. My blood ran cold. It wasn't possible. The door was locked. I had checked it over and over. Yet here it was, something trying to get in. I grabbed my phone, trying to dial 911, but the call wouldn't connect. The screen flickered and another message popped up. This one sent a chill down my spine. You can't call for help. There's no one who can save you. The handle turned again and I heard the sound of nails scraping against the door as if something was trying to pry it open. I backed away, my legs shaking. The noise was getting louder. I could feel the pressure, the weight of whatever it was outside. I darted toward the back door, but it was no use. It was locked and I didn't have the key. There was no escape. Then out of the corner of my eye I saw it. A figure. A shadow. Emerging from the darkness at the far end of the room. It moved toward me slowly, deliberately. I couldn't see its face, but I didn't need to. I knew that whatever it wasn't human. The air turned icy and for the first time in my life I felt the unmistakable presence of something other. Something from beyond the veil of the world I knew. I scrambled for my phone, trying to turn it off, but the screen wouldn't go dark. It flickered and glowed with an unnatural intensity. I could see the reflection of the figure in the screen now, its face twisted and contorted in a grotesque, animalistic grin. It was close, too close. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I turned to the door, the only exit, but I knew it was useless. That's when I saw the final message on the screen. It's time. And with that, the lights went out completely. The darkness swallowed me whole. I was no longer in control. I was no longer alone. And in that final moment, I realized the truth. The game was never meant for me to win. It was always meant for me to lose. I woke up to an unfamiliar sensation. A deep, heavy pressure on my chest. My lungs felt like they were being squeezed, as if the air around me had turned to thick tar. I blinked rapidly, my eyes struggling to focus in the darkness. My body ached as though I had been lying in one position for hours, maybe even days. Slowly, I became aware of my surroundings. The familiar hum of city life, the distant sound of cars, the hum of streetlights, the occasional shout from the street below was gone. Instead, all I could hear was the unsettling sound of silence. No outside noise, just the oppressive quiet that seemed to press down on me, making each breath feel heavier than the last. I shot up, gasping for air, but immediately regretted it. My head swam, my vision spinning as if I had been drugged or knocked unconscious. I was disoriented, struggling to get my bearings. Where was I? I looked around. My apartment, it was gone. The walls were unfamiliar, the furniture strange. I was no longer in the place I had known for the last few years. I was in a small, windowless room. The walls were bare, made of some cold, industrial metal, and the only light came from a single, flickering bulb overhead. It cast long, eerie shadows across the floor, making the space feel even more suffocating. The panic set in immediately. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak as though I had no control over them. I reached for my phone, but it was gone. I didn't know how or when, but it was nowhere to be found. I was cut off from everything. The only thing I had now was the feeling that someone or something was watching me again. Then I heard it. A sound in the distance. A faint click followed by a low hum. I didn't know where it was coming from, but it was unmistakable. It was the sound of something mechanical, something that didn't belong in the quiet of this strange, cold place. I stood, bracing myself against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The door was locked. I had no idea what was outside, but I knew I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone here, just like I hadn't been alone in my apartment. That's when I saw it, a small, thin piece of paper slipped under the door. It was folded in half, the edges jagged and uneven as though it had been hurriedly shoved through the crack. I hesitated. My gut told me not to touch it, that it was just another trap, another game being played at my expense. But curiosity, no, desperation got the better of me. I reached for the paper with shaking hands and unfolded it. The message on the paper was simple, but it sent a wave of terror through me. You belong to us now. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. The room seemed to close in on me again, and the walls felt like they were pressing in. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I knew it would do no good. Whoever had done this to me, whoever had put me here, was far beyond my reach. Then the mechanical hum grew louder, closer. I turned toward the door, expecting something, anything to happen. But I wasn't ready for what I saw. The door swung open. And standing there, just outside the threshold, was the figure. The same figure I had seen earlier. The one who had been haunting my every step. The man from across the street. The one who had been watching me, following me, guiding me into this nightmare. He stood there, his face obscured by shadows, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He said nothing, only stepped aside, motioning for me to follow him. I knew I had no choice. The fear that held me in place was overwhelming, but a different kind of dread kept me rooted in place. If I didn't follow, I would never find out what was happening. If I did follow, I was walking straight into the hands of whoever or whatever controlled this world. But I had to know. I had to find out. So I stepped forward. And with every step I took, I felt myself slipping further into something darker. Something beyond my comprehension. I wasn't just walking into their trap, I was being drawn into their world. And I knew, deep down, there was no turning back. I followed him, each step heavy with dread, my pulse hammering in my ears. The figure didn't speak, didn't even acknowledge me as I stumbled behind him. His movements were deliberate, measured, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. He led me down a long, dimly lit corridor, the walls lined with metal doors that looked identical, cold, industrial, impersonal. The air was thick, stale, almost suffocating. I didn't know where we were or how we got here. The place felt like a labyrinth, twisting and turning in on itself. There were no windows, no signs of life, just the hum of machinery echoing from somewhere deep within the structure. My mind was a blur, thoughts racing in every direction as I tried to piece together what was happening. Every once in a while, I caught a glimpse of something strange in the shadows. Faces, maybe, flickering in and out of view. Eyes. Eyes that seemed to be watching me just like before, just like the ones that had haunted me through the screen. But this time, there was no escape. I had crossed the line. I had gone too far. And now I was trapped. We came to a stop in front of another door. This one, unlike the others, had a strange symbol etched into the metal, an intricate design, something that felt ancient and sinister. I didn't recognize it, but I could feel its weight, its meaning. It was a warning. The figure turned toward me, his face still hidden in the shadows. He reached out, gripping the handle of the door with a strange finality. Without a word, he opened it. Inside, the room was completely different. It was sterile, clinical, the walls lined with screens and machines I couldn't even begin to understand. In the center of the room stood a large glass tank, filled with an eerie, glowing liquid. My stomach churned at the sight of it. And then I saw them. People. Not like any people I had seen before. They were suspended in the liquid, their bodies motionless, their faces frozen in an expression of absolute terror. They looked as though they were trapped in time, caught in some kind of endless loop. I could barely make out their features, but one thing was clear, these were people who had been here a long time. The figure stepped into the room, moving toward the tank with a sense of purpose. I wanted to back away, to run, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of stone, my body frozen in place by the overwhelming horror of the scene before me. He turned to me then, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. There was no emotion in his gaze, just cold, calculated indifference. "Welcome to the real dark web." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and my world tilted sideways. I had been a fool. A curious fool. I thought I was just playing a game, diving into something forbidden, something dangerous. But this was not a game. This was the dark heart of everything I had seen. The people in the tank weren't just participants, they were victims. The ones who had gone too far. Who had stumbled too deep into the abyss. And now they were trapped in this hellish, unending nightmare. I tried to speak, to ask questions, but the words caught in my throat. "You wanted to know?" the figure said, his voice soft and almost soothing. "Now you see what you've joined." Before I could respond, he reached for a console nearby, pressing a series of buttons. The screens blinked to life, displaying images, videos, things I couldn't unsee. Faces, crying, begging for mercy. But the worst part wasn't the violence. It was the look in their eyes, the look that told me they had known exactly what they were getting into. They had all been just like me once. Curious, foolish. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Something inside me was pulling me deeper, urging me to understand. To understand what I had really stumbled into. The figure turned to face me again, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't warmth, nor was it malice. It was simply satisfaction. "You belong here now," he said again, his voice final, his tone carrying the weight of something far older and more terrible than I could comprehend. He motioned to the tank, the people suspended in the glowing liquid. "You're just like them. You were always meant to be here. The dark web doesn't let go. And neither do we. A chill ran through me. A cold, suffocating dread that made my heart race. I realized then that I wasn't just a victim of curiosity. I was a part of something far larger, far more dangerous. And I wasn't going to escape it. I was one of them now. The words lingered in the air like a death sentence. You belong here now. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in terror. My mind struggling to comprehend the depth of what was unfolding before me. The glowing liquid in the tank, the faces of the trapped souls, all of them, victims of curiosity, victims of their own desire to look deeper, to seek the forbidden. And now I was one of them. A part of this unseen network of horrors. The figure's cold, emotionless gaze never left me as he stepped closer, his footsteps echoing in the sterile room. The hum of the machines, the glow of the monitors, they all felt oppressive, suffocating. This wasn't just a place, it was a prison, a trap. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I wanted to fight, to break free, but my legs wouldn't move. I had no choice but to face the truth that was sinking in with each passing second. This was the price. The price of going too far, of crossing that line. The dark web was never just a series of websites. It was a place of power, of control, where people like me were drawn in, manipulated, and ultimately consumed. The deep, dark corners of the internet were just the surface. This was the real world, the true world beneath the surface, and I was part of it now. The figure finally spoke again, his voice low, almost hypnotic. There's always a choice, though. I stared at him, desperate for some kind of way out. My mind raced. What choice could I possibly have? I was already trapped in this nightmare, already part of whatever twisted system controlled this place. There was no escape. He seemed to sense my thoughts, his lips curling into a faint smile. You can join them, he said, motioning toward the tank. You can become one of the many. Just like all the others who were curious, who couldn't resist. I felt my stomach drop. To be trapped like that forever, lost in the glowing liquid, unable to move, to scream, to fight. It was the end, a fate worse than death. I had no intention of becoming another nameless victim in their collection. But then he said something that sent a shiver down my spine. Or you can be one of us. My heart skipped a beat. One of us? The figure stepped even closer now, his voice barely above a whisper. You have a choice to make. Embrace the power of the dark web. Help us control it. Help us guide others who wander too close, and in return, we'll let you live. We'll give you a place in this world, a role in the endless game. You can be the one who pulls the strings, the one who watches. But you have to decide. Join us or join them. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me, each syllable pulling me further into the darkness. I knew what it meant to join them. It meant becoming nothing. A part of their system, an endless cycle of torment. But what did it mean to join them, to join the figures in the shadows, to become a part of whatever dark force ruled this place? I thought about the faces in the tank, their eyes empty, lost to fear and despair. I thought about what it had cost me to get here. The games, the curiosity, the horror I had seen. I couldn't go back. There was no going back to the life I had before. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the cold truth settle in my chest. There was only one way out now, and it wasn't to fight it. I swallowed hard, my voice barely audible, hoarse from the fear that had paralyzed me. I'll join you. The figure nodded, the faint smile never leaving his face. He stepped aside, motioning toward the glowing tank. Good. Now you'll understand. Welcome to the real game. And as I took that first step into the unknown, my mind was filled with a horrifying clarity. I wasn't escaping this. I was becoming a part of it. The room faded into darkness, and I felt myself slipping away, no longer in control of my body or my mind. The game had begun, but this time I was on the other side.